Vladimir Putin has issued a dire warning to Israel as Israel's ongoing genocide absolutely shocks the world, and as the axis of resistance amplifies and accelerates and escalates its opposition and its fight back against the Israeli regime. We have breaking news of, and this is happening August 11th, Hezbollah rocket attack on Israel. And you might say, Danny, there's been rocket attacks on Israel, on northern Israel, for many, many months. And this is true, but read the report here. This is from X. This is August 11th. Hezbollah launched a significant rocket attack from Lebanon into northern Israel, targeting areas such as Nahariya and Kabri. The attack involved 30 rockets, including Russian-made Katyusha rockets, and was notable for its scale and the apparent failure of Israel's Iron Dome system to intercept many of the rockets. The incident has sparked widespread discussion and concern, with various sources reporting the impact and implications of the attack, including the penetration of the Iron Dome. This has been an ongoing conversation as there is a coming storm from Iran after Israel's assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, and of course in Lebanon of Fawad Shakur. Now we are seeing Hezbollah strike back. They announced this, and I'm going to pull up the Cradle, which is a great source on everything West Asia. The Cradle has cited what Hezbollah announced just August 11th, as we are speaking, in support of our steadfast Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip and in support of their valiant and audible resistance, and in response to the Israeli enemy's attack on the steadfast southern villages and safe homes, especially on the town of Marub, the Islamic resistance fighters bombed on Monday, 8/12/2024, the newly established headquarters of the 146th Division's command in Jatun with a barrage of Katyusha rockets. So Katyusha rockets are flying over Israel. They are striking the Iron Dome, okay, or they are penetrating the Iron Dome as we speak here. This is huge news because this is something that Lebanese media, and mind you, Al Mayadeen, this is the breaking report from Al Mayadeen, they have just been banned in Israel and labeled a terrorist organization. But here they report that the Islamic resistance announces the targeting of new headquarters of the 146th Division in Gatan in northern Palestine with a barrage of Katyusha missiles. So these are the reports coming out right now. And of course, this is not something necessarily new that Hezbollah is attacking northern Israel. But what is new, and unfortunately we cannot show the video footage here because YouTube often takes down videos. I just had this happen to me this past week. We won't show the footage of the missile barrage, but all reports indicate that the Iron Dome has been penetrated. And just so you don't say, well, there's no proof of that, the Cradle actually did post a video, and there you can see brief footage, but I am not going to play it in full here because it's very likely that we will get shut down. So that is happening as we speak, and that is part of this. Katyusha missiles are Russian missiles. They are Soviet era missiles. And just some context as to the Russia-Hezbollah relationship that has to do with this dire warning that has come from Vladimir Putin and Russia over what is happening in Gaza, what is happening in the region, is the context, which is so important here, is that Russia recognizes Hezbollah as a legitimate political organization and military organization, one that has official status inside of the Lebanese government and is within the coalition that is the most popular and leading political force in Lebanon. So not only does Russia recognize Hezbollah, but Russia has deep relations with Hezbollah that you can trace to the protection and defense of the Syrian government during the US-led, NATO-led dirty war there beginning in 2011. Okay, so that is where this really begins. Of course, Russia and Hezbollah had relations before this, but they collaborated and cooperated to fight ISIS, to fight the al-Nusra Front terrorist groups that were being funded by the Gulf monarchies, by Israel. They were being armed by NATO. They were being armed by regional countries, the so-called Gulf monarchies, to invade Syria and overthrow the government. And then Russia stepped in 2015 and worked with all forces, including Hezbollah, which was fighting inside of Syria, to destroy these groups. And it paid huge dividends. And that relationship never stopped. And that is part of this war that is not being talked about. So Hezbollah at this moment is pounding Israel and pounding the IDF with Russian missiles. And this is not a coincidence. This is part of an overall geopolitical calculus where Russia, while it maintains relations with Israel and does not want to see a wider war, does not want to see a conflagration, does not want to see its relationship with Israel broken entirely. It is very angry at Israel, not just for its ongoing airstrikes on Syria, which is a completely unacceptable to Vladimir Putin and Russia, but it's also very angry about developments in West Asia, not with the Gaza genocide. I'm going to pull up now, okay, because this is coming as there was a huge strike, right? An Israeli strike on a school in Gaza City that killed over 100 Palestinians in Gaza City. Now, this school in Gaza City was being used. This occurred on August 10th, I believe. Yes, August 10th. And it hit the Al Tabin school, multiple 2,000-pound bombs, all made in the USA. 2,000-pound bombs, 3 of them, killed 100 Palestinians, many of them women and children. So bad was the damage of this bomb that the bodies were unrecognizable. They were incinerated. They were not bodies anymore. They were just essentially they were piles of ash, and that ash, that stuck together ash, had to be measured and weighted in order to tell, well, who was an adult and who was a child. And they weighed what was left of the human beings, the Palestinians that were killed, in order to tell how many children and how many adults were killed. Absolutely despicable and disgusting. And that death toll is going to go up. That's just one crime that Israel committed in a litany of crimes in this genocide, which has led to this situation. Remember. And here's what Russia had to say about it. Russia was furious about this. They were furious about this. They said that the attack that reportedly killed 100 people was deeply shaking Maria Zakharova, who, is the foreign ministry spokeswoman and arguably speaks on behalf of Sergei Lavrov and Vladimir Putin, said that they are deeply shaken by the latest airstrike. And while offering condolences, they are calling on Israel, condolences to the Palestinian families, to refrain from attacks on civilian targets. We believe there's no and can be no justifications for such actions. And so many people have criticized Russia for not doing more. And I understand where that comes from, because what is happening in West Asia right now could very well spill over into a wider, hot, incredibly violent and damaging, and really just absolutely earth-shattering economic collapse for the rest of the world, a humanitarian crisis that extends far beyond Gaza. But just talking about Gaza, 189,000 plus people and counting, according to the Lancet, killed by Israel in less than 1 year in a highly concentrated, essentially prison camp that Israel has been administering and occupying for all of this time. And not occupying. Yes, they're occupying because they have political and economic control over entire people's lives that they have stuffed into now what is a cauldron for non-stop bombing and military operations. So all of this is to say is that Russia's not happy about this. Russia's not happy about this, and they're not happy with what occurred in Tehran, the assassination of Hamas's top negotiator, Ismail Haniyeh, and they are making moves that are, Russia is making moves that are scaring the collective West, scaring NATO, scaring Israel. Here is a report from the Foreign Policy magazine, which is a neocon rag. Okay, the Kremlin plays a Mideast crisis broker. Russia doesn't want Iran to escalate, they say, but it's also giving Tehran weapons. That's part of this warning, is that Tehran gets weapons. Iran gets weapons. Iran has been armed by Russia, and Russia has also requested arms, and we're going to get to this right now. Okay, so here's the report. It says, standing by Iran with the Middle East on tenterhooks, waiting for Iran's response to recent assassinations of senior figures in Hamas and Hezbollah, widely attributed to Israel. It's Moscow dispatched former Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu to Tehran for meetings with the president's senior security officials. This happened last week, the end of the first week of August. It's the latest sign of deepening ties between the two countries as they work to strengthen an anti-U.S. alliance. Shoigu now serves as Secretary of Russia's Security Council. He's the head of the National Security Council. Following a cabinet reshuffle in May, met with Iran's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, and with Major General Mohammad Bagheri, chief of Iran's armed forces, on Monday, August 6th. Russia is among the countries that have stood with the Iranian nation in difficult times, said Pezeshkian to Shoigu. So they urge restraint, of course. Russia says they want all parties to avoid actions that could push the Middle East into a wider war. But Reuters reported that Russian President Vladimir Putin, through Shoigu, had urged restraint in Iran's response and advised Tehran against attacking civilians. They reaffirm our principled and consistent need to refrain from any actions that could further escalation. However, that is the diplomatic speak of Russia. They will never on this world stage say that they support conflagration and escalation in war. They want to maintain diplomatic ties with Israel and all countries in the region, and they don't want to see an economic lifeline completely cut off because of the absolute chaos that an Israel-Iran war would ignite. So here is the but, okay? There's I don't know why they thought there was hope that that Russia would do the U.S.'s dirty work in playing peacemaker, aka drawing Iran back from attacking. They've got influence, as the Westerners thinking, maybe, just maybe, but no one is hoping, right? U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller isn't hoping. None of these think tank neocons are hoping this. Why? Because Russia and Iran have strengthened their defense ties in recent years as Tehran has supplied material strapped Moscow with attack drones and missiles to help it carry out its war in Ukraine. The two countries are working on a cooperation pact, according to statements from the Russian Foreign Ministry. Iran has reportedly requested radars and air defense equipment from Russia, with deliveries already underway, says the New York Times. The Iranians have an extensive wish list from Russia, says Hana Note, Eurasia director for the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies. Top of the list for Iran is Russian Su-35 jets, which have been incredibly effective inside of Ukraine. The two countries finalized an agreement late last year, according to the Iranian Deputy Defense Minister, General Mahdi Fari, under a deal that would help modernize Iranian Air Force's aging fleet. Moscow is yet to deliver the jets, though, something Tehran reportedly pressed Shoigu on during the visit. The two countries are also cooperating on electronic warfare, where Russia has advanced capabilities that have plagued Ukrainian armed forces by jamming U.S. weapon systems. And ostensibly, they would do this to Israel. Catch my drift, okay? So there's greater knowledge diffusion now between these two countries. And here is what the New York Times report had to say after Shoigu's visit, where they do reveal that there are weapons going to Iran from Russia, and it could very well be vice versa, which we're going to get to in a second. So this is just a meeting on, this is just an article on the meeting, okay, where they talk about support. Sergei Shoigu, we are ready for full cooperation with Iran on regional issues. The big one is Israel. The big one is Israel right now, okay? Iran has provided Russia with military drones, and the two countries have finalized an agreement to expand military cooperation. Two Iranian officials familiar with the war planning, confirmed that Iran has made a request and said Russia started delivering advanced radars and air defense equipment. The official spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to discuss the aid publicly. So there you have it. There are arms deliveries underway. And now we are seeing Hezbollah use Russian missiles that ostensibly they've had these Soviet supplied weapons, these Soviet weapons, because Russia has been cooperating with Hezbollah, the Syrian government, with Iran, when there was and still is an incursion into Syria during the dirty war. This is what we are talking about here. We are talking about a foreign policy by Russia, which is antithetical to Israel's overall designs. Putin is sending a warning in a way that you won't hear or see. You won't be able to read it. You won't be able to hear it because that warning is happening through action. The actions of Russia are solidifying the axis of resistance. You could say Russia could do more. You could say Russia could take a side, but that would be incredibly mistaken in this diplomatic environment where Russia is fighting a war itself in Ukraine. All right. And so this is the latest news as well. The Jerusalem Post, as Hezbollah is making these strikes inside of Israeli territory, inside, or you should say it's Palestinian territory, but inside of northern occupied Israel or northern occupied Palestine. Here we have the Iranian military delegation is right now in Russia as of August 11th. Last Tuesday, the New York Times reported that Tehran had begun requesting Russia to use its advanced air defense systems. Okay, so Iranian military delegation in Russia as we speak. I mean, this is all developing so fast as we are preparing to see how Hezbollah's operation that it has just launched in northern Israel. Of course, it has been pounding, right? It has been pounding northern Israel for many months, but it has now accelerated that and has announced that this is a bigger operation and using Russian missiles to do it. Okay, so there's a lot of panic about this. There's a lot of panic about Russia's role, especially in relation to Iran. So here is what Israeli media Haaretz had to say. Western powers increasingly concerned about growing Russia-Iran cooperation. After reports that Russia is providing military aid to Iran and has tried to supply weapons to the Houthis, Western diplomats are ringing alarms. Russia's involvement worries us a lot, and it should also worry Israel, as one diplomat told Haaretz. The United States and European powers have expressed concern in recent days over Russia's growing involvement in the Middle East conflict, especially Moscow's cooperation with Iran and assistance it's providing to Ansarallah, aka the Houthis, in the Western mindset. The issue came up in conversations between U.S. and Israeli counterparts, U.S. officials and Israeli counterparts. The main concern of the Americans and Europeans is that Russia will exploit tensions to advance its interests in the Middle East and help Iran and terrorist organizations allied to it continue fighting Israel. Okay, so that is the worry inside of Washington. There is a lot of worry inside of Washington, inside of the collective West. Okay, so here's the thing. It's not just Russia. All right, because this relationship that Russia has with Iran and the axis of resistance is very much strategic, right? So here you have Iran. This is from Euronews. Okay, Iran and Russia to accelerate strategic partnership. And what they're talking about here is not just military aid, which is going to be very important, right? It's well documented, as they say here, as Russia has been provided Shahed drones to fire on Ukraine as just one example. But we also have the other examples of Russia giving air defense equipment now to Iran as it prepares for this retaliation against Israel. But the report also detailed the need, from Iran's side to implement agreements between the two countries to strategic partnership, with Russia delegate emphasizing the necessity to speed up the building of the North-South Corridor, a 7,200-kilometer multi-mode transport network connecting a range of countries, including Russia and Iran. Okay, so that is the goal, all sectors, and that there's a very good prospect for the development of these actions. Okay. So that is the most important part of this for these two sides. But it's not just Russia and Iran. It's Russia, China, and Iran. This is the new axis of evil that we keep hearing about from the collective West. We constantly hear that it is Russia, China, and Iran that are threatening, right? Threatening the United States, threatening the collective West's overall interests, their desire to dominate the world. Well, in some respects, they are correct, but for the wrong reasons. They don't explain that, in fact, the reason why Russia, China, and Iran are so much more influential in West Asia, for example, is that they're offering an alternative to endless war, militarization, potential nuclear conflict, genocide, like what is happening in Gaza with its, heavily armed attack dog, Israel. This is why there is all of this energy, all of this momentum toward Russia, China, and Iran. But look at China. China says it supports Iran in defending its security. So Wang Yi, the foreign minister of China, got on the phone with the newly appointed foreign minister of Iran and told him straight up that they support the defense of Iran's security. What does that mean? It means that what Iran does here has legitimacy. Whatever it does to defend itself from the attack on its soil has legitimacy. It doesn't mean that China signs off on the particular actions that Iran may take, especially if those actions lead to a broader conflagration. No, that's not what China is saying here. What China is saying here is that it supports Iran in defending itself, meaning that it has the right to. And China, of course, has made this case about Palestine, has made this case about Gaza, that the people there have the right to defend themselves via international law, the right of armed self-defense. Iran has the same right. In a phone call, Wang Yi repeated Beijing's denunciation of the assassination of Hamas's chief Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran on July 31st, saying the strike violated Iran's sovereignty and threatened regional stability. Iran and Palestinian Islamist group, Iran and Hamas have accused Israel of carrying out the strike that killed Haniyeh, but Israel, which it always does not confirm or deny the responsibility for the killing, which is fueled concern that the war between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip was turning into a wider Middle East war. Iran has vowed to harshly punish Israel over the assassination. Wang Yi told Ali Bagheri Khani, the Iranian acting foreign minister, that the killing of Haniyeh directly undermined Gaza's ceasefire negotiation process and undermined regional peace and stability. China supports Iran defending sovereignty, security, and national dignity with the law and its efforts to maintain regional peace and stability, and stands ready to maintain close communication with Iran. So, what does this mean? This means that China is saying, we're not going to get in your way. Do what you feel like you need to do as a sovereign nation to defend yourself, to assert dignity, to respond to what was a deep violation of international law and of your territorial integrity. We will not get in the way. That's because China understands not only that international law gives Iran the capability and the right to make such a response, but China would never want to stand alone if something similar were to happen to China. That is the bond, that is the link that connects China, Russia, and Iran at just one level. It's the fact that all three of them are under attack from one global system, the unipolar order led by the United States, different nodes of that system, whether it's NATO in Ukraine against Russia, whether it is the United States arming, funding, backing Israel as it commits genocide in Gaza and tries to start a regional war, whether it is China facing down the United States, the militarization of the entire Asia Pacific across the First Island chain, across the Philippines, Japan, South Korea, Guam. We can go on and on and on. There is a heavy and deep militarization of the entire region against China, not least in Taiwan, which is Chinese territory according to international law. So all of this is to say is that the United States and Israel are messing around. They're fucking around, and they're about to find out. And Putin has sent a very strong warning, as well as China, because China is involved in this as well in terms of giving diplomatic solidarity to Iran and the axis of resistance to defend themselves where they need and should be defended. Neither of them support a wider war in West Asia. They don't want to see Iran and Israel fight a protracted war of attrition or anything, or any nuclear proliferation that Israel is capable of engineering. This could get very bad very quick. But China and Russia are standing behind those forces which have seen their territorial integrity and their sovereignty trampled on. And that is the big warning that Vladimir Putin in particular has sent to Israel here by arming and supporting a force like Hezbollah. And now Hezbollah making these strikes onto Israel and penetrating the Iron Dome. That's a message sent that Russia, while it is not trying to get involved directly, it has already announced that U.S. adversaries are on the table to be supported, because look at who the United States has been funding and arming: Ukraine. Look at what it has been doing, funding and arming Ukraine to literally invade Russian territory, which is happening right now in Kursk. Russia has said it will do the same elsewhere. So now there's reports about arming Ansarallah, but Iran getting increased military assistance. Now we have Hezbollah striking with Russian missiles, right, into northern Israel. And just a last note on Hezbollah's attack before we end here. Israel was already noting, this is before this operation that was just announced. Okay, this was before the operation that was just announced. Hezbollah attacks growing deadlier by the day. Head of the Upper Al Jalil Regional Council, Results, criticizes the Israeli government for its strategy in the north, which has left tens of thousands unable to return to settlements. Hezbollah is pacing up its operation on the northern front. We just saw how paced up it has gotten. Okay, this is a report just from yesterday. So we have Results saying, okay, head of this Israeli Security Council, actually it's a local governing authority for this occupied territory. They criticize the central Israeli government, including Netanyahu, on the Israeli Broadcasting Corporation. So they discovered Netanyahu's government did. They said that there's an enemy in the northern borders called Hezbollah, and it awaits a response to the assassination of Fouad Shakur. He stressed that the situation in the north is deteriorating from bad to worse as daily warning sirens sound across northern occupied territories due to Hezbollah's drone and rocket attacks. The Israeli official revealed that dozens of settlers' housing units have been destroyed, vast areas have been burnt, and dozens of casualties have been recorded among soldiers and settlers of the Israeli kind. In addition to the material human losses suffered by the Israeli occupation, Zoltz pointed to the completely dysfunctional, sirens like that one, pointed to the completely dysfunctional healthcare, banking, and educational sectors in the north. Zoltz reiterated his calls for a radical change in the Israeli government strategy in the north that would allow evacuated settlers to return to their colonial outposts. So around 40% of evacuees from the settlements in northern occupied Palestine are contemplating not returning even after the war ends, because they know that Hezbollah has fired thousands of rockets, anti-tank missiles, and drones toward the settlements and military outposts of the occupied Golan Heights in Syria and Upper Al Jalil, supporting the Palestinian resistance. Why won't they come back? It's because they know this is not going to end. The settlers. This is the problem that Israel has gotten itself in. That's not going to stop. Israel has opened up a can of worms that it cannot close. And that can of worms is the end of its existence. Because the axis of resistance is not going to stop just because the genocide stops. But the genocide hasn't even stopped. Even if it does, though, Israel has sent a message to the region that it needs to be arrested. It needs to be brought to heel. It needs to be controlled. It needs to be put on a leash. The United States isn't putting Israel on a leash because the United States wants to use Israel as its attack dog. It wants to use it as its unsinkable aircraft carrier. Of course, Israel is essentially a landlocked colony. It does border a sea, but it's a colony that maybe the metaphor doesn't really work for, but the message is the same. It is an incredibly valuable military asset to the United States, even if Israel and its actions and behaviors are antithetical to a broader long-term strategic posture for the United States. That is the conundrum for the US, because without Israel, the United States is done in the Middle East. It cannot hold influence. There's no soft power in the US's overall foreign policy strategy at this time. It's over. It's gone. That's never going to work again. And that, arguably, you could say, completely and was utterly and completely destroyed when the United States invaded Afghanistan and then Iraq in 2001, 2003. Completely destroyed. Killed over 1 million people. You don't come back from that. You don't become legitimate. In fact, the U.S. is about to get kicked out of Iraq very soon. We hear this almost every couple months that Iraq is going to get rid of the troops. But we actually now, I think it has been confirmed that Iraq will finally close up that so-called coalition of the willing that has been occupying Iraq all of this time. But all of this is to say, everybody, the big point here is that Vladimir Putin has sent a big message to Israel. So too has Iran, so too has China. The multipolar world is going to do everything it can within the limits and the confines of this international system, because there are limits and there are confines, in order to bring about an end to this carnage and the threat of a greater conflagration. But Hezbollah is already on its way to escalating its operations, penetrating the Iron Dome. Iran's attack is coming soon. Heck, when this video comes out on replay, it very well might have already happened. But all this is to say is that we cannot discount and discredit all of what Vladimir Putin and what Russia is doing and the multipolar world is doing here to support the axis of resistance if Hezbollah's now escalating operation on the northern occupied area called Israel is of any indication.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.